So just a few words about myself, some background here and CTOs. For those of you that don't know me, or this is your first call, my name is Barry Cranford, and I'm one of the organisers of the London CTOs. I'm not a CTO myself. I am in fact a recruiter, or I run a recruitment company called RecWorks. So what we're doing here, I've personally been on a mission for about the last 12 years to prove and find a way that recruitment can be a power of good in the tech industry. So the London CTOs is a really good example of that. We've been organising it since 2011. I've almost 100 events now. And my personal passion in it, the bit that I love is the mentoring aspects of it. So I love it. We've seen so many examples as recruiters of people that have met mentors, come together and seen these positive life changes. So what we try to do is use our network as recruiters, given we're at the heart of these communities, to connect people that are facing challenges or having struggles or in new situations with people that are a few steps further ahead of them, that are happy to help. So this event is a great example of that. We've got a number of aspiring or junior CTOs that have signed up. We've got 10 or 15 people that have said they're happy to mentor or share their stories. So that's what it's all about. So so without further ado, I'll kick off with the first question that we've got here. I'll just let a few more people in. Okay, so our first question comes from Gavin Palmer. So Gavin is a head of technical services at a Salesforce consultancy. His goal is to eventually move into a CTO role at some point in his career. And Gavin would like to know, how can he get there and what are the essential skills that a CTO should have? Anyone want to take that on? Yeah, Marte.
There's a lot to unpick here. I'll speak about a couple of generalities. Taking a step to CTO means that you're actually changing from being part of the technical team to actually being part of the senior leadership team. And so one of the key things you have to be prepared to let go is a lot of the focus on just purely the technical matters and the nitty gritty of the day-to-day. You're actually now stepping up into a strategic role as opposed to a tactical role. And your peers, who are the other C-level execs, are the people you now need to get on with and the people you need to support, and you need to understand all of their job roles a lot more than you ever previously did. So my first bit of advice is, whatever they tell you, it's a people problem. So number one skill of a CTO is actually people management and organizational structures and behavior and process. And number two is understanding all the other parts of the business, because you will be asked to make decisions which will directly impact revenue, marketing, sales, HR, you name it, you'll have impact on there. So I'll leave it at that, because there's lots here to say, and I'm sure other folks have got some more detail to add to it.
Great, thanks, Martin. Timothy, did I see a hand go up there?
Yes, you did. Yeah, great summary, Martin. I would say, I'd add to that, I'd say, you're going to be board visible, so you need to be comfortable understanding investors. Your focus needs to be moved towards the creation of shareholder value, which is an abstract concept that you need to get your head around. And you need to really understand the perspective of investors, your board, and be sensitive to those concerns and understand how to speak to them. So, you know, you can't be using technology. You're definitely moving away from what's the most exciting, interesting technology to be using, but to how is technology going to really generate value for the business, and being really and how to communicate that to business people, right? How to communicate the value to a business audience that may have no background, are unlikely to have any background on the technical side. And then I think separately, especially people coming out of, say, VP of engineering or engineering management roles, you do need, it's not about being heartless, but you do need to start to think it's not so much about, when you're in a management role, oftentimes you care a lot about your people, and you care about what's best for them, and you care about their happiness, their fulfillment. And while that's still something you need to keep an eye on, you need to also have your strategic head on about what does the organization need and not need from a people perspective. where is our competitive advantage? You know, what should we be thinking about getting out of the business? What should we be keeping in the business? So there is this kind of, you're thinking about what's best for the shareholders and the company again. So it is a different mindset, and it can be uncomfortable, definitely uncomfortable.
Brilliant. Thanks very much there, Timothy. Chris, I've seen you've had your hand up for a little while there. Did you want to add something, Chris Wales?
Yeah, I don't know if I can add too much to two very good summaries, but just thinking in terms of practicals, in terms of making that leap from a more engineering role to a senior leadership role, I think a few things that build on what was said there. I think one, recognize that when you go into senior leadership, you're now a political player. And what that means is that you need to have relationships across the organization. You need to be externally focused rather than internally focused. So if you wanted to make that leap, have conversations, make sure you're talking to people in whatever the other departments are, sales, logistics, HR, etc. Start to understand their concerns, because that gives you that wider perspective, and it will help you be seen as somebody who understands genuinely the organization. So I'd build those relationships now. I think if you had a skill area to invest in, I would say your communication skills. For better or worse, people in technology are quite often stereotyped as not being great communicators. That's often unfair, but what turns business people off more than anything is when we speak the way that we would speak internal to our teams in technical language. Really work on honing how to translate not only the technology into plain English, but even sometimes to incorporate elements of what you might think of as business speak. Talk in terms of return on investment and those sorts of things. So really, really focus hard on how you communicate with other people, because they'll expect you to speak their language and not yours. And I guess if you have an existing CTO, you know, ask to share in some of the tools of that job, because there will be hopefully written strategy papers, there'll be budgets, forecasts, planning. These are things that if you've been working internal to a tech function, you may never have had sight of, but you'll be expected as a senior leader to be reasonably conversant with on day one. So again, I'd ask your next person up to help mentor you and share some of those tools with you.
Great, thanks, Chris. And with that, I think we've just popped over the 5 minutes. One thing I would say, the digital hands raised were easier then to organise, because you're on two different screens. So I'm constantly looking back and forth. So if possible, use the digital hands if you can use that functionality. So I'll move on to the next question that we've got, which is a linked question, to be fair. This one comes from Alvaro Moya. So Alvaro is a CTO and co-founder of several startups, and currently the VP of engineering at WeFox. He says, it's important for me to know what others think is key to succeed as a CTO from the leadership perspective. What skills are essential to be part of a C-level? So this is slightly different in that it's essentially somebody that's already working as a CTO, but is interested to get advice from others on where the essential skills are. Anyone want to have a go at that?
Sorry, Barry, that actually came across quite garbled for me. Can you repeat that one?
Oh, sorry. Yes. So Alvaro is a CTO and co-founder in several startups, currently VP of engineering at WeFox. He says, it's important for me to know what others think is key to succeed as CTO from the leadership perspective. What skills are essential to be part of a C-level? So this is someone already working as a CTO, interested to get advice from others. You hear that okay?
If I can have to clarify it. Hello, I'm Alvaro from Barcelona. The topic here is I grow from developer to co-founding my own startups as the CTO. So at the end, the CTO in a company of 3, you are essentially the developer, right? So at the end, when you are growing and then you become the VP of engineering in a huge company, is when you really face a real C-level, right? A real board where you need to take more like high-level decisions, and then maybe here the skills are not the same that you need in previous steps, and that's why I was asking that question.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
We've got yeah, sorry, Upile, did you want to have a go at that?
I did, yes. I just lower my hand again. No, so it's an interesting thought. So essentially, really, by the sounds of it, you know, you're managing multiple different roles for different, well, it's the same role, but for different startups, right? What I would always say, the skills really that you need personally, I think the most important part is making sure that you clearly understand the product roadmap. I think that's very important because all of them are different startups, different skill sets, etc. But in terms of really to engage or to communicate across to, you know, to the other exec team, I think being clear in terms of the product roadmap, that's the most important thing. So really, if you have a products team within each of those startups, probably that's the best way to start off with, so you can have a clear plan. Yes, things will change technology-wise, will always be different and will always be changing, but from just experience, having a clear roadmap is probably the most important way to engage with the with any other key stakeholders within the organizations across. For bigger organizations, it's slightly different because usually the product team is fairly a new thing. You have, you know, architectures, business analysts, and so forth, and usually they are kind of like the product-related stakeholders. In smaller startups, product team is probably something that we're more or less used to. But I think having that clear structure overall, that would help massively.
Great, thank you very much. And Martijn?
So I always like to talk about the 4Ps framework. So people, process, product, and platform. When you're an early stage startup CTO, you tend to be focusing primarily on product and platform, right? You're trying to shove that thing out as quickly as possible, usually to try and get some funding from an investor or get your first users. As you transition to being like a CTO or a VP of engineering for a larger org, you have to flip that around in your mind. People comes first, process comes second, product, weirdly enough, actually comes third, and then platform is kind of typically last. So, you know, my recommendation as always is to go out and start finding mentors or start getting some formal learning around psychology, organizational behavior, how to structure large tech organizations, and that sort of thing. For folks who are kind of in these fast growth startups that are, you know, VC backed and growing from, say, you know, 10 to 100 to 200 plus, going on a fast track MBA or MBA like program is a really good, fast, practical way for you to pick up all of the variety of skills that, you know, that the board will expect you to have as a CTO, but you haven't got yet. And quite often you can convince the board to pay for that and get you an executive coach and go on that journey with them, as opposed to them just dumping you at the next stage of growth because you haven't got the right skill set, which I see happen a lot, which is really sad, right? So if you are an early stage startup CTO, definitely be talking to your board or your CEO about, you know, them supporting you and you leveling up to the next stage.
Perfect, thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Chris, did you have something you wanted to add there as well? Chris Galley?
Yeah, following on from Martin's point, which I think is and the various others, it's really important to see that change between those 4Ps as the business moves forward, and be in a position to be proactive about that. It's very easy when you're moving from a sort of development role to being reactive and dealing with the product or the platform. But looking forward to what the business is going to need over the next 6 months, year, and actually putting yourself in a position to be able to deal with that. So getting, you know, whether it's a fast track MBA or any form of learning and professional development, is getting yourself in a position where it's not going to come as a shock to you or something that you haven't seen at all before. So I would say that the looking forward and at what the business is going to need and getting yourself in a position where you can supply that through those various means would be a critical piece there.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Chris. And one more, the last one before we go on to the next question. Chris Wales, did you want to add something else to that?
Yeah, just building on Martin's point about people, the other thing I would say is when you're transitioning from a small organization or a startup to a big one, you get into a position where you cannot manage everybody within that team. You're going to start to have a layer under you of people who are managing their own teams. And that is critical to get right. If you get to an organization of some scale where you then need to decompose your team into teams, make sure the very first thing you do is focus on that next layer of people under you, because if you have the wrong people, you will end up having to manage everything and you'll be swamped and you won't get to do that bigger strategy piece. You need to have at least a couple of right arms that you know that when you give them a chunk of work to do, you can leave it with them and they will do it at least as well as you would have done, if not better, probably because they will be more specialized. And that can be really hard if they're doing something that you used to do. I was a development manager. After a developer, I became a CTO and then a CIO, and I still have to think very hard about letting my dev manager make the calls because he has done it more recently than I have and will make better calls by and large. But if you don't get that next layer under you right, you will get bogged down very quickly.
Brilliant. Thanks, Chris. Okay, I'm going to move on. We're closing in at 10 minutes till 1. So this question comes from Nick Silver. So Nick was the guy who inspired this event. And Nick has been in tech leadership positions for 20 years and an interim for about 8 years. Nick says, most of the time, and particularly in the interim space, I've had some kind of mission or needed to fix some kind of problem. But sometimes there's a need to find opportunities and maybe uncover new problems, particularly by aligning with your CXO peers. And I think those come from more open, less purpose-driven conversations with those CXO peers around the proverbial water cooler. So as a mission-driven individual, he's keen to understand how different kinds of CTOs connect less formally with their peers and discover those hidden opportunities and problems. Bruno, did you want to have a go at that, or was that for the last question? Sorry.
I think it was for the last question. I'm still thinking about this one. Thank you.
No problem. Ken, did you have something to add there?
Yeah, I think for me, it's always been go and understand what your peers actually do. Go and spend time in their part of the business. If one of your peers runs an ops desk, I've done it in various roles. Go and spend a day in a call center sitting on the desk. Go and do what some of their people do. And I think you will really firstly understand how the business really works at a lot of different levels. You will also get a huge amount of empathy from the people around the business. So you'll start to be recognized as somebody that is prepared to lean into other parts of the business. And then actually spend some time with the people that run those parts of the business and understand where their problems are. I don't think you have to go in and bang solutions all over it, but go and understand how the business works. And I think you can do that informally simply by just saying to people, can I come and spend a few days in your part of the business?
Great, thanks, Ken. Owen, did you have something you wanted to add there as well?
Sure, maybe I'll just be repeating it in different words, but the way that I do it is, so I'm a services CTO, so unlike most of you, I have we're 6,500 people and I only have a team of 20. The way I do it is by trying to understand all of the different delivery units we have as to what problems the leaders have in them. And then along with my group heads, we try and figure out how we can make a positive contribution. People generally like to tell you what their problems are. And if you can help them solve their problems, you make a lot of friends that way quite quickly. So I think it's a variant of get to know the parts of the business. It's actually be quite specific in seeing what their challenges are and how they relate to whatever kind of CTO you are, which for me is maybe a bit different to the average, but that certainly worked quite well at Endava.
Great, thank you, Owen. Simon Potter, did you want to say a few words?
Sure, thank you. Nice to be here for the first roundtable, everyone. I just really wanted to extend on that as well, because there are small details that I think often get missed. And this is, for me, coming from a sales background of all things, which is that not only are you going to get a lot of benefit just from observing people and hearing what they have to say about their various problems, as often as not, they can also tell you what the solutions are in a practical sense. Now, the problem that we often see as technical people is there's a language issue, and these have all been things that have been discussed already during today. But the problem is the business not understanding technology and vice versa. They have the various problems. We don't quite speak the same language, and therefore we come up with solutions that we think addresses their problems, but actually it never quite meshes. And this is a common problem rather than a problem that happens all the time, of course. But if we can find a way as CTOs to actually dig in, get to know what their problems are, and then ask them what their solutions to these things are, then it is usually just a process of translating that into a technical requirement rather than us necessarily solving problems. However, the other thing to add to that, of course, is that, and this is something I'm dealing with right now with our very overwhelmed support desk, is that non-technical people often have no idea what possibilities exist there. So actually being able to say, okay, well, what the problems are and getting the solutions from them, but then also nudging them along with ideas so that they can imagine what's possible, you can then still get a better solution out of them. They can tell you what the solution to their problem would be, but you have to facilitate something meaningful that you can then turn into a technical solution. So it is this constant process of getting to speak each other's language, being able to draw out solutions from that end user, and then filling any blanks with technical details that they may or may not be aware of are possible, or even conceptually conceivable. So it really is, again, just to sort of reiterate that communication thing, but it's not always just a watch and learn. Sometimes they don't have the vocabulary or the scope of language to express what a solution may be. But if you work with them on that, they can often get to the point where they can tell you what that solution is. And then for you, it just becomes filling in the details and choosing the appropriate technical solution for it.
Superb, brilliant. Thanks, Simon. So no more hands raised on that. So we'll move on to the final question in this. And this one comes from Wiesen Tanaza. So Wiesen's current role is a CTO founding member of a company. He's had 5 years in tech leadership roles of 10 to 15 engineers. He is new to the CTO role and is keen to reframe his thoughts and ask himself the right questions in the new environment. So his question is, for someone who is transitioning from a tech lead to a CTO role in an early stage startup, what are the common oversights that he should look out for? Timothy, yeah, go ahead.
So I think, well, first of all, I think it's really important in an early stage environment that your peers, your CEO especially, but also the wider executive team understands your role. Like, what is it? Why are they making you a CTO, right? Especially if you're the first CTO in the business, and if you're replacing an existing CTO, it's really important to understand what they're expecting of you, because they may not actually have the right view or they may not have a view or perspective about what a CTO is. This may be the first time they've ever had a working relationship with a CTO. Or they may be asked to get one by their board, right? So understanding that the context you're walking into from a leadership perspective, I think, is really important, and to really help frame your role for them, I think, is also important. They may not know what to expect, right? And if they do, it'd be really good to get those expectations out and understood. And so that's really important. The other thing is, I would definitely set up, just so tactical things, set up regular one-to-ones with everyone on the leadership team, make sure you're building those relationships with them, and getting an understanding about what they see, what's going on for them on their side of the fence, which is what people have said previously.
Brilliant. Thanks, Timothy. Did anyone else have anything they wanted to add there? Chris Galley?
I'd also say, and it's a theme with a number of the previous questions. You're getting into a role as a sort of poacher turned gamekeeper, and all of the bits like the technical debt and other pieces that potentially you've been living with, and you've been, as often happens, it gets swept under the carpet. You're now going to be tasked with managing that. And it's very easy where you've had some say in creating that to continue it rather than actually being able to stand up and recognize it and try and do something about it and balance it. You're always going to have that, but you've now got to find a way of balancing that and ensuring that the strategy that you're following, you can meet it and balance resources properly.
Great, thanks, Chris. Martin, did you want to say anything on that?
Actually, I think James can go first.
Okay, great. James McGibbon.
Thanks. For me, it was being even more aware of the business requirements around things to do with audit and compliance. So as a developer, obviously, I'd always been aware of things like GDPR and the need for security. But as CTO, you're the person that is responsible for that, and the buck stops with you for when things go. You know, when you get an audit and you need to be held accountable. So for me, it was very much being aware of the legal requirements around things like GDPR and making sure that they were enforced and followed, and setting up processes. And again, it comes back to the P's that Martin mentioned. You know, it's about process and things like that.
Great, thanks for that, James. And Martin, do you want to finish it off then, and then we'll go into the breakout rooms after that?
Yeah, I think the last point I was gonna add to all the other excellent answers is kind of your hiring plan and being able to build a level of tactical management below you. So whether it be your director of engineering or engineering managers, whatever you like to call it, those folks are really, really hard to find. The good ones are really hard to find because it's a bit of a thankless role, right? They have all the responsibility and unfortunately not much of the power. And I suspect many of you have sat in that role before, right? So if you think it's challenging, you know, hiring data scientists and things, you know, before this whole COVID thing hit, you know, hiring good engineering managers and planning for that future structure takes even longer. So you have to start that process super early, and then really think carefully about how you do your hiring. And putting a lot of formality around that. So, you know, going and talking to your people team and that sort of thing will help. Again, as a developer, as a tech lead, you typically aren't that involved in the deep dive, nitty gritty of the hiring process.
Great, superb. All right, well, thanks everyone. That's closed on the half an hour. This has been the most organized one that we've done so far in terms of coming just about five or 6 minutes for each question. It's definitely trickier trying to manage a round table with 37 people on it, but I hope you've all enjoyed this part of it. I'd love to hear. We'll chuck out a feedback form, so please let me know on there or on Twitter or LinkedIn or anywhere else. Shout at me and let me know if you've enjoyed it. I'm going to now open up the break. Oh, and with that, if anyone in particular has given advice, we'd love to hear it. We'd love to sort of pass on all the positive feedback. So if there's anyone that you feel has really helped you, anything like that, then please let us know and we can pass that on. I'm going to press the breakout rooms button now, which always makes me a bit nervous about what's going to happen next. But you should all just be magically taken into a room with about 4 or 5 people in. So you're free to drop off the call if you've got other engagements, obviously. If you fancy sticking around, it seems to be really good fun. So I'll be around here at least for the next half an hour. So you can come back into the main room if you like. But yeah, other than that, just feel free to all introduce yourselves and keep going with the conversation. So thanks everyone. I'm pushing the button. Enjoy.